Hi, everybody. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium, and I have a special guest tonight that I've been looking forward to talking to again. This is Jay Bachochin. Say hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay. Come on. You knew that was coming, didn't you?
I was waiting. I was waiting. I knew it was going to be there.
How you
So
doing, Holly?
I am doing great, and I am so glad to get to visit with you again because it's been a while. It's been a
Yeah,
minute,
yeah, it has.
and I've had some other experiences that I can tell you about later. But I want to hear about what you've been doing because this is the guy who started out doing ghost investigation and ended up changing gears. And so I kind of want him to do a little recap of where he started because it's a great story, and then talk about what he's done here because in the field of paranormal research, Jay is very unique for a couple of different reasons. So I want everybody to get comfortable, get a blanket, get your popcorn, and get ready because this is a wonderful story you're going to hear. So tell us, Jay, how did you get started in paranormal stuff? What happened?
See, now you put me on the spot. No, that's all right. Well, the way I always tell it in the long version, because that's how I explain things.
Sure.
I always grew up I don't want to say I always grew up. I grew up I think the weird kid in my family because while everybody was out in the summer, biking or playing baseball or softball or whatever, I was downstairs always waiting for like Godzilla and King Kong to be
Right.
on TV or the creature features back then.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And but it wasn't until the late 70s when I had well, actually, it was me, my mom, and siblings all were witnessing this weird. I'm gonna call it a UFO, just kind of hovering, blinking out of what I don't want to say existence, but it as soon as it stopped spinning, it was like across the sky where we could still see it, and it would just be hovering,
Oh,
and it would
wow.
do this in different, different type of formation up there. So at that point, I really think it was kind of an eye opener for me, being a young lad back then, of saying, there are things out there. And so throughout my life, I've always, kind of focused on certain things like Loch Ness monster and ghosts.
Right.
And I actually got an opportunity in mid late 2000s where me and my wife started a paranormal group called Wisconsin Paranormal Investigators,
Right.
and it was just us, and Taps was on TV, or Ghost Hunters.
Right.
And I always said, is that real? And
Right.
I was smart enough to know, I won't say smart enough to know, but just the common sense of saying it's TV,
Right.
it's for entertainment, so maybe this stuff is not, I don't know, let's go out and try to hunt the truth. And
Right.
that pretty much meant to go out, let's seek our own answers.
Sure.
And so we did that for several years. And they actually had a team of 10. We brought all the DVRs, set up almost just like Ghost Hunters, but it wasn't
Right.
really just I don't want to say a title or something I did. It was like I really, really wanted to know what the truth was.
Right.
And I mean, it started getting a little saturated in like 2011, 2012. Everything you turned on had a ghost on it,
Yes.
and all of a sudden there were not just, we weren't a special team in the early 2000s. All of a sudden everybody became paranormal investigators.
Right.
And and then I kind of, I don't want to say shifted gears, because I told you I liked looking like Loch Ness monster, or even you hear about werewolves. You heard about the Beast of Bray Road right here in Wisconsin. Well, Bray Road is a 15-minute drive from my house right now, to where I could go patrol it anytime I want. It's like
Right.
somebody's seeing something.
Right.
And at that time, the ghost, I don't want to say the whole interest in it, but I think the whole team thing, it was just time. It's kind of like a band, right?
Oh,
Like
sure.
and like the Beatles, right? They had to break up sometime.
Right. Sure.
And so I ended up kind of patrolling Bray Road,
Hmm.
which is all, it's a state road, you can drive on it, but everything else is privately owned by third, fourth generation farmers, so you
Okay.
couldn't get out and investigate. So we do a lot of patrolling. Well, there was one particular night we did end up in the Kettle Moraine, and there was four of us total, and we were walking out there in an October night and dark, and just had flashlights, and I had a real crappy camcorder,
Mhm.
digital tape, and we went out there, and it was the first time I heard something that I couldn't explain the sound. Now, I always say I didn't grow up in Outback Jack.
Right.
Can't track animals then. Didn't
Right.
I really kind of stayed out of the woods back then, but this intrigued me to the point where I said, it sounds like either a person trying to make an ape sound,
Hmm.
or maybe a howling monkey.
Okay.
Whatever it was just sounded very primate-ish. But
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, here we are looking for the Beast of Bray Road, which is technically an upright canine. And I'm
Right.
like, no, this sounds more primate than canine.
Right.
And at that point, and I remember it, it was September 18th, 2013, that it just kind of, it hit me then. I needed to find out what was in there. Now, I told you I was always interested in like UFOs,
Sure.
ghosts,
Right.
Dog Man, and Loch Ness Monster, but I never did say Bigfoot. I mean,
Right.
honestly, to me, Bigfoot was a butt end of a joke. Somebody said Bigfoot, I would laugh.
Sure.
And it's funny now, being this long doing this, the
Right.
joke's kind of on me,
Right.
because while I heard whatever that howl was and we couldn't identify what it was, we I kept going out there, and this is all in my first documentary, so you
Right.
kind of see the progress of that, but it's kind of what I do now. So
Right.
I never say I'm a Bigfooter or a Squatcher. You know what? I'm a hiker. I'm a truth seeker,
Okay.
and I'm an observer. So
Okay.
that's kind of the long end of that.
Right. So when you got the switch over, you and your wife had started doing ghost investigations, and so you had a willingness to just find things and to figure out for yourself whether things were real or not real. And like you said, you grew up being open to the paranormal and making up for your mind, were these things possible or not possible? But when you started really in 2013, that was like your first real contact, other than seeing a UFO situation when you were very young. This was like your first real experience with the paranormal situation. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had during the ghost hunting days, I've experienced, and it could be misidentification or it may not be. It all depends on
Right.
if you were there and what the situation was.
Sure. Sure.
But there was one time, and I'll backtrack a little bit to
Okay.
2009, where we were called to investigate a um, a house that was built in the 70s, and it was in the basement, and the mom and the kids all saw what looked like this old man who would appear in the basement, and he was holding a cigar box and trying to offer it, and the witnesses said it's kind of really quick, but it was like watching the film that you would put on a projector and put against the wall.
Okay.
And they said it was speaking, but it was like a silent film. You could not hear what he was saying, and then
Oh, interesting.
then it would disappear.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, so a big group of us went there to investigate that night. And I remember it was right around 3 in the morning down. And I was sitting down. We kind of moved throughout the house
Okay.
throughout the night, but I remember at that time it was 3 o'clock. I had a millimeter, like it's an EMF detector,
Mm-hmm.
and so it kind of glowed a little bit up on the ceiling, the green LED light. And at this point, the adrenaline's gone. Now you're just sitting in someone's basement. Now you're tired and you're thinking, how am I going to get up in the morning? I mean,
Right.
it just kind of gets you down there.
Right.
And there was another investigator who was sitting in the room outside in the basement, and
Mhm.
he could see my light that was kind of hitting the ceiling.
Okay.
And he goes, "Hey, are you moving in there?" Because he's seeing a shadow move across the the ceiling.
Sure.
And I'm like, no, I'm just sitting here. Right when I said that, something, and I mean something, literally, all of a sudden I just felt like this ice go through me.
Oh, wow.
And I felt like a static charge. And I've heard that before about
Sure.
the areas being cold. I
Right.
actually documented my arm. I looked at the hair on my arms, and they were sticking up like the redwood forest.
Yeah.
And I could actually feel it on my neck, everywhere on my body. I just felt it like I puffed up like a cat.
Oh, fun.
But the funny thing is I wasn't scared,
Okay.
because I just said I'm sitting down there. No, Paul, I'm not moving in here. And all of a sudden,
Right. Yeah.
so that I'm going to say that would probably be my first interaction
Okay.
with the unknown, whatever that was.
Okay.
um and then coming up to being out in the woods, hearing that, well, that it could have been a deer, coyote, that, because every animal will make different sounds,
Right.
while they're doing that. It's not just like a wolf will howl.
Right.
If they're mating, if they're search, whichever it is, we could not find a match for what
Okay.
we heard, and even till this day we didn't. But I was able to record a little bit off that
Okay.
digital camcorder I had. It wasn't a good mic,
Right.
but I was able to catch a little bit, which is in my first documentary.
Right. So, just for everyone that hasn't heard it, now I know that I personally watched it on Amazon, and it's called Finding Jay, and I highly recommend it. It's not. It's Jay doing his own documentary. It's not something that went out to a big company. This is a guy doing it on his own, and I appreciate your skill level that you take with it, because you're really careful to not jump to conclusions and to not make assumptions, and you're very plain about the way you describe what you see and hear. And that's something I really appreciate personally, because we have to be objective. We can be excited about the paranormal all day long, but you lose credibility when you start making grandiose claims, and you're not doing pretend. This is real life. This is actually happening, and you're actually experiencing things. So it's a different perspective. I appreciate the way you approach the
Well,
subject.
thank you, and I appreciate that, because again, not doing a Hollywood production and doing it on your own. I have a passion for movies. I'm a graphic designer, by
Mhm.
trade, through my life, and
Right.
as well as putting something together. But it's not as easy as what people think, especially if
Right.
you're doing your own filming of your own interviews, going on location,
Right.
then taking hours and hours and hours and hours of interviews. And
Right.
now you're just trying to get the snippets to
Right.
try to make a sensible, I don't want to say story, but for what
Right.
I'm trying to express.
Right.
And so that in itself just takes a lot of time. So usually it's funny because my family's like, oh, you're going to work on another one. And they know where I go, because then I just become engulfed in what I
Right.
do.
Right. Right. But this is the passion, and I feel like for all the people that do little videos on YouTube like myself, or just do a podcast, we have our own little niche of research, or our own little group of experiences that we like to talk about. But you've actually taken years, many years of experiences and research, and taken the time to actually produce something in a story format that's a movie, basically, or
Right.
documentary. Yeah.
But of course, it's just trying to kind of share the truth, at least my version of what I observe is what's
Right.
truth. Not to, like you said, to come to conclusions on that, but
Right.
when it comes down to it, my first film, the painstaking time it did to create it, but to be able to share 5 years of my first part of my research,
Right.
um, and it was tough. And actually, that was going to be a mic drop. It was what I
Yeah.
don't mean to be being cocky on that. I'm
No,
just saying
no.
I'm
I get.
just done. I'm not in this, what I try to do of seeking my truth.
Right.
For it to be anything for what people think when you put a documentary out for fame, for fortune.
Sure.
Well, you know what? how many people here actually recognize who I am, which is okay that they don't.
Right.
And trust me, I'm not driving around a Ferrari
Right.
or a Lamborghini because I'm not making money off this.
Correct.
It's basically selling, not selling. It's trying to tell and share the truth,
Right.
so that somebody across wherever, the United States,
Hmm.
Canada, wherever, will be able to watch that one day going, that happened to me too.
Right.
Okay, so now there's a connection
Right.
between the two of saying, it just didn't happen here, it happened there. And next thing you know, the more people talk about it, the more I think people would come forward, and then maybe we do get closer to the truth altogether.
Right. Exactly. And and that's the other thing that's interesting too. So Jay's unusual in the sense that I personally know several people that research big areas, or they travel. They like to go to different states or even other countries to research the legendary Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And that's amazing. And there's definitely evidences that have come up from all over the place. Um, but in Jay's case, he's really focused on his own area, which I find amazing because that requires a lot of patience, but it also makes you wonder. So, this is someone who's getting more and more experience over the years of noticing signs, and he's got groups of people that have gone with him. He's not just by himself. His family's been involved, and he's even got stories of his children seeing things that he didn't even notice, which I love because to me, kids are the greatest barometer next to us to kind of affirm something's different. It's not what we're used to seeing, it's out of the ordinary. So, if you wouldn't mind, take a moment and let's talk about some of the earlier things that you observed. What kind of things did you notice, and where were you at, and what time of year did you notice things? And let's get a little background detail about that first series of documentary that you were talking about and how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally, I mean, the strangest thing because I just started, um, I want to say researching, but listening to more encounters of how Bigfoot behavior would be. Because remember,
Sure.
the howl I heard, I really can't say for sure what it was. I mean,
Sure.
it could have been a person out there making himself sound like an ape.
Right.
We really don't know, but nobody's ever come forward to that yet. And that's a lot of the things is because I kept going out there is when it was just a couple months later, actually, me and my wife just walked out there and it was snowing that day. So we had like, 1.5 foot, 2 foot drifts on the
Right.
trails that we just made. And believe me, she was out there primarily just to hike.
Sure.
And of course, I've got my head on a swivel because I heard something there. And
Okay.
it was pretty much following her. And she was getting ahead of me on the kettle trails that kind of go up and down. And she was making her own trails. I mean, that's how much it was snowing. It was lightly snowing at the time, but
Okay.
um, finally she gets ahead of me. And of course, this day and age, instead of yelling for me, she texts me saying, "Hey, where are you?"
Okay. Now, was this daytime? What time of day
Yeah,
was?
yeah. This would have been daytime in
Okay.
February of,
Okay.
yeah, I think 2014,
Okay.
and
That's funny.
just yeah, before she was texting, I was following her tracks, and as I was coming up to hers, I saw these divots on the left and right side of the path that she just made.
Okay.
And I'm coming up to it. My first thought was, and it's kind of coming down a slope
Okay.
of the kettle, but it's kind of coming down, going over the path, and then I think going down. But as I was walking up to it, my first thought was a rabbit. You know how they can hop and they
Sure.
can leave big divots.
Hmm.
And then I'm getting closer and I'm thinking, well, it could be a deer as well. A deer,
Okay.
we can put both legs together, make that. Then
Sure.
I get up to it and I look and I'm like, this thing resembles a foot. I mean,
Okay.
it really did. And it stepped clear over onto the other side. So I looked at that one and that was even more defined. But
Okay.
but then because the snow was so white powder,
Yeah.
powdery white, that there wasn't a lot of definition when
Okay.
you first looked at it because you've got, it was the afternoon and it was light and I'm looking, and then I did resemble toes. But then I looked, and then I saw another divot,
Mhm.
and we counted up to 12 of them before they disappeared.
Okay.
And all I could do at that point was document it, and so I, because that's what I do.
Sure.
It's not even out in the woods. You can ask any of my kids that I've got a camera in their face 24/7 because
Okay.
that's what Dad does.
Right. Right.
So I'm sitting there filming it, and I'm looking, and all of a sudden, as I'm filming it, I hear these like wood knocks coming
Okay.
up from behind me, and I'm actually filming this still because I was just filming the prints.
Sure.
And I turn around, and I'm like, and I'm holding it up there, but I'm like, I could literally see up there, and I'm like, this is it. I'm going to see whatever's making this sound.
Sure.
Could this be Bigfoot? Bigfoot doesn't
Right.
exist.
Right. Right.
And I just heard the knocking and everything, and then it just stopped after about 52 seconds, and that's when my wife was coming back, and I go, I got to show you this. First I
Yeah.
showed her the prints, and I showed her the video I just took, and she's watching it. And then when the knocking came, her eyes got as big as saucers
I
because
bet.
she thought that was me knocking on trees to call
Oh
Bigfoot.
my.
And it was,
Whoops.
and I said, "Look, I'm recording it. That was not me."
Yeah. Wow.
So that I thought that was a pretty cool instance. But in the same area, and this would have been in the fall of that year.
Uh-huh.
Me and another friend were out there hiking, same trails,
Mhm.
and as we're getting near the end of our walk,
Mhm.
we kept hearing what he thought was acorns falling.
Okay.
And and I'm always like, I don't want to add fuel to the fire and say,
Right.
yeah, no,
Right.
call it black and white, whatever it is. I don't hear it. That means I'm deaf. Whatever.
Right.
Um, but then, because I was really like, I don't know, but it was September, so I'm thinking they're not really falling right now. And as we're walking, then all of a sudden it sounded like something fell onto the path, but it did not. It sounded like it was rock on the path.
Oh. Okay.
And I'm like, no, it doesn't. That sound like. I go, that sounds like a rock.
Mhm.
And we stood there, and then you'd hear something being thrown through the woods, real
Okay.
slight, hitting the treetops, just, and
Okay.
then they would land somewhere near us, but we're like, and then they kept doing that. Then they would stop. We'd walk. So we walked another about 500 yards, and it was still doing it throughout it. And then it finally stopped. And I'm like, all right, so maybe somebody's tracking us or whatever.
Mhm.
So I get this grand idea of bending down and picking up a nice sized rock and heaving it into the woods, throwing it. And I could not hit the side of a barn, but
Right.
I hit this tree perfectly, which made a loud pop.
Okay.
And the guy I was with, he's like, "Oh wow, that was good. That's a good sound." And I'm like, "Yeah, watch now. You're gonna throw them at me because I just threw a rock out there." By the time
Right.
I got done with that sentence, a barrage of rocks came from so far away and just whipping through the trees. And I remember recording, but I wasn't
Wow.
looking through the viewfinder. So
Right.
when they went down, my whole camera shakes down, kind of like one of those movies.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I could actually see a couple rocks bounce by my feet. Did not
Oh.
catch it on record, but I know that those were rocks. Now,
Right.
you hear about Bigfoot throwing rocks, little pebbles, pine
Right.
cones, or whatever. I always say I didn't see what threw something out there.
That's
Like
fair.
just like I did not see what made those prints in the snow.
Correct.
Or I didn't see what made that vocalization. All I can do is piece together the data,
Correct.
um, and be able to record it, and learn from it.
Right.
So that's kind of like right in the beginning.
Definitely. So that's the interesting part too. So your family has been involved in this the whole time, and you've had friends that have gone with you many times to go and do this research, and you've spent quite a bit of recording time and following through to kind of double check yourself of what you think you saw and what you think you heard. But there was a particular incident that I want you to share again about something your daughter saw when she was about 4 or 5.
Yeah,
Because
that's in my first documentary. That was
It gives, well,
honestly,
it gives you the chills. It gives me the chills every time you talk because it's kind of incredible. So if you would please share that.
yeah, it definitely is. It was kind of it was more frightening for me, and for her, she doesn't recall. Obviously, she was I think about four
Right.
and a half at the time, and this was again during the day.
Right.
I'd always take my son out because he's 4 years older,
Mm-hmm.
and I started taking her out as well. And again, little legs, little hike. I don't want the kids to be afraid of nature. I'm not bringing the kids out as Bigfoot bait. I've gotten
Correct.
and so many comments on some of my channels, and
I know.
that
People
I'm
misunderstand.
a super dad for doing that. No, it's basically just being able to walk out there because I didn't do that as a little boy, and I
Right.
thought this is a good time to share it with my kids. And me and my youngest daughter, we are walking out there. We, maybe walk for about a half hour,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're starting to walk back a little bit. She's skating on the ice because it was where it's snow, then it melts, then it freezes,
Right. Yeah.
and she was really kind of getting into ice skating at that time. So she'd kind of move her legs on it,
Oh, sure.
and we're probably I'm going to say 150 yards away from the car the way we would have to go. I couldn't see the car, and so I kind of stop and looking some like last looks around,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point she is skating at me. Then she grabs the back of like my pants where my belt is, and she's hanging on. She goes, pull me, so she can ice
Sure.
skate around.
Great.
And so I'm doing that, and she's having a good time, and then we just kind of stop, and she's still doing her thing. And just then something, I was looking at my 12, but something at my 2 was catching my eye, because that's how the humans detect, right? By
Right.
movement.
Right.
And just like a T-Rex, there was movement. I look over there, and I could see through these standing pines, um, close to about 80 yards away, easily. And I look and I see what looks like um, everything's brown. It's February, so there's really no green. Even the pines are,
Right.
light. Nothing was bright out there, but I see this
Right.
auburn shape that, and I can't recall because I always say I can't tell if it was a head peeking
Right.
around a
Right.
body, but whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
um, it just seemed huge. But just as I look at it, the thing and I know it moved to my left again, close to 80 yards out. And I always say, well, what do you mean, boom? Like, what do you mean? I said, it's like, I don't want to make anybody mad if they like flies, but when you have a fly swatter and you're
Yeah.
about to get the fly and you think you
Yeah.
got him, but he moved that
Right.
quick.
Right.
That's how fast it was, but it left what looked like an auburn blur. So it's
Okay.
like, it moved so fast, but it was like a blur.
Right.
And the thing that really got me was my daughter's still skating around and kind
Yeah.
of laughing, and I'm thinking, what am I doing out here?
Right.
I, people say that, they come out there packing firearms and everything. I'm like, I don't care if you're double wielding, two AKs out there. If
Right.
this thing moved that fast, this thing could actually grab my daughter. And
Right.
that, that really got to me. And
Right.
so, right away, I kind of hold her hand, and we make our way back, obviously.
Sure.
But
Sure.
that instance really made me rethink what I was doing out there. And again, these were the early years still. I was
Sure.
only doing that for, at that point, a year and a half, maybe going out
Right.
there.
Right.
And it was, yeah, I did. I always say, I think I hung up my backpack for about a month because it really, it rattled me.
Right. Well, because that was very real to see her playfully moving around and everything was normal, and then to see something very abnormal. Because that's, I think, one of the most important parts about paranormal research. When you're an investigator, your head is on a swivel all the time. You're prepared to see what you might not plan on seeing. You are kind of prepared for the unknown. But part of that is acknowledging, I saw something. Did I see something? Yes, I know I saw something. And that double check with yourself, because we always are so hard on ourselves. Did I really see that? That was so strange. What was that? And by the time you've sorted out all the what if and maybes, and then to make that connection that that was real, that was so fast. How did something that far away move like that? Because
Yeah,
that,
no, yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that because it's again, people will say, well, that couldn't have been a Bigfoot then. Okay, why would somebody say that? Well, because they can't move like a blur,
you don't
and
know
we
though.
don't. We're right, and we don't know. I guess the best part of this whole paranormal Bigfoot UFO thing is that nobody knows, no matter how sure they are about themselves, we
Right,
really don't know. And I'm one of them too. I always say, hey, I could be a great talker. I do presentations, I can put together
right,
documentary. I still don't know.
right.
And this is where we're heading. And it used to be Jay Bachochin, Hunt the Truth.
Mm-hmm,
Then it became I'm trying to find my truth.
mm-hmm,
And now today it's more find your truth because that's what it's gonna be. You don't take my word on it.
mm-hmm.
You what do they say? Believe half in what you read, half in what you hear,
Right,
but 100% what you see.
right.
And the 100% that you see is going to be your own observation. And then you're going to get people going, yeah, but the mind can play tricks, it can fill in blanks. Obviously, it can. But just like you were saying about having your head on a swivel, you saw something, and that something is
Right,
that you can't explain.
right,
So calling it a shadow person or a ghost versus a gray alien cloaking or
right,
a Bigfoot, we don't know, but it's something that you have to find yourself.
right. So, in all of your research, can you say that you feel like you've seen a mix of things in the kettle moraine? Do you feel like you've seen more than one type of
Oh yeah,
bicycle?
yeah.
Okay.
We see orbs out there, things that I call sprites,
Hmm.
um, and well, we haven't talked in how long now?
It's been a
Uh,
while.
in
Yeah.
a while. So it was 2023 in March that I had my first daytime sighting,
Oh, wow. Let's hear
and
about that.
yeah, this is just as odd as it ever was because it was during the day.
Okay.
A friend of mine took me to one of her areas, which is close by mine, but as the crow flies, right there,
Okay. Right.
and she showed me all these different tree structures out there, which again, I don't know what did it. You can deduce that a human, did this, but at the same time, you'd have to have construction, equipment getting back there, lifting things up and whatever.
Sure.
So we're out there for about 3.5 hours, and it was beautiful. It was like a winter wonderland. I think we had a weird late March snow that morning. It was like
Hmm.
a blizzard, but it stopped right away. So it was kind of like a squall. And
Hmm.
so everything that when you looked at it was all the standing pines out there were just blasted on the side with just snow and snow covered ground. It was like a winter wonderland. And we're leaving, and I actually stopped and looked to the woods because I do this. I talk to the woods.
Hmm.
Don't say I talk to Bigfoot. I talk to the woods and I put up
Right.
my hands and do my all right, guys. See you later.
Right.
Maybe I'll see you next weekend over in my area. Just
Right.
kind of a friendly goodbye.
Right.
And as I'm looking this way, I do have a body cam. I always wear it, but I
Mhm.
don't put it on my head. So if my head's turned,
Right.
it doesn't see. And as the universe joke, cosmic joke would be, I look to the right just with my head, and from nowhere
Hmm.
is this black, I mean pitch black, bipedal figure,
Hmm.
and I saw it. I'm going to say 2 seconds. For those
Okay.
2 seconds, I was able to see a lot,
Hmm.
and it came from these trees. Which again, when I could actually see about 100 yards through all these standing pines.
Okay.
There was nobody nowhere to hide out there, but
Okay.
something was running out there, a deer, a person or whatever, you'd be able to see it. Well, whatever this was came from a set of trees, and I don't know how I would not have noticed it because I had a grand view of it and just
Okay.
saw it like glide. Uh, I mean, it literally looked like somebody that was on skis, and it just
They weren't making an up and down walking motion. They
no,
were
no, no. This would have been
okay.
like somebody, being back there, the whole terrain. There is no flat anything back there. You're
Correct.
stepping on fallen trees, brush, whatever dead falls out there, and it just glided. But the thing is, at that point, I gasped, and I don't gasp. You know, I don't want to just make it a gender thing, but women are
Sure.
like they can be like,
Right.
it's all like, look at this present, and
Right.
I'm not like that. All right, you just call me a dude, just call me
Okay.
a guy. I don't gasp.
Right.
I
Right.
I gasped when I saw it. It took my breath away,
I bet.
and oh, I mean, it was such a fascinating. When I looked at this, it was like in an instant, everything that I've done beforehand,
Hmm.
whether it was casting or seeing or having rocks thrown at me or hearing this or seeing footprint, none of it, I don't want to say mattered, but right now the sighting was so real to me that that was the end game for me. I mean, that was it. It's I saw it. I have no idea what it is, but
Hmm.
I saw it. And it was definitely a very emotional week for me. Like I could not come down from this high that I had, and I wanted to tell the world. Now think about how crazy that is, right?
No, I totally get that.
You
No,
know,
I got some follow-up questions on this. Did you smell anything?
no, no. Well, for one, the sighting itself, like I said, remember I said I could see about a football field
Okay.
distance through all these. This was probably about my best guess was about 60 yards.
Okay. So it weighs away.
Yes,
And what time of day was this?
it was about 3:03 p.m.
Okay. So still some daylight.
Oh yeah, definitely daylight, and it was a sunny day too.
Okay.
So even
Okay.
though the squall came through and snowed everywhere, that was early on, later morning. By the time we were done, yeah, the sun was out. Beautiful day.
So for people that don't live near a forest area, for people that are used to flatlands or whatnot, try to describe a little bit. If you were to stand at the edge of the kettle moraine, what do you see when you look?
Well, and the kettle is very unique because you would think of Wisconsin not being, any mountains or hills or anything like that, right? We're in the flatlands, like you were
Right.
saying. Uh, Coming up to the kettle moraine, you have these woods that just look like they're woods. However, the kettle was created by the glaciers that
Okay.
created the Great Lakes.
Okay.
So there's divots everywhere. Some are 300-foot dips,
Okay.
and some of are 200, some are 100. It's a very unique terrain.
Okay.
But the moraine is the meadow.
Okay.
So there's some meadow areas, and the kettle would be actually the woods and the divots into it.
Okay.
Sometimes I say it's like inverted hills because if you're
Okay.
down in a kettle, you have a long way to climb up.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah,
So it's very uneven surface and
oh
it's
yeah, 100%. There's nothing even about it.
so trees, shrubs, there's all kinds of underground cover because I think that's one of the most important parts that I try to explain to people when we talk about sightings in a wooded area. Anybody walking across these areas makes noise. It doesn't matter if it's covered in snow or the middle of fall and crunchy leaves or spring, there's always sound. There's a sound that resonates. It's like every step you take, there's swishing sounds, there's crunching sounds, there's all this noise going on. So any sound that you have travels, it just carries in the air. And so when something is moving and you don't hear noise following it, it's a little eerie.
Oh yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
and again, I was in a different lifetime. I was a deer hunter for a few years. So
Okay.
I would sit up in blinds and you'd be sitting there, you're waiting for that deer to come by. Sorry if that
Right.
offends anybody. I don't do it anymore.
No, that's
Um,
okay.
but you would hear it coming. Kind of, you
Yeah.
just, and then you
Right.
look, and it's a little chipmunk or a squirrel
Right.
making
Right.
all that racket. There
Right.
is, yeah. I've even heard out in the kettle. I've heard mice under the leaves. So
Yeah.
you hear everything. There is no way to avoid detection.
Correct.
Sometimes people are like, well, maybe Bigfoot doesn't walk on the ground. It just kind of grabs on from tree to tree to move around. And again, very possible, but being something that large and that heavy, I think you would hear branches break all the time. And you
Something.
don't hear
Right.
that. And you don't
Right.
see the evidence of that out there. So it's kind of, yeah. So usually when I hear sounds, I'm generally like, okay, that's cool. This is just nature. We're in nature's home, and
Right.
that's nature.
Exactly. So how often these days are you able to get out and do your research? What are your plans and goals right now? What are you working on?
Well, I mean, right now, I still, no matter what I do, and I'll get back to that in a minute. I'm still always going out into the woods. There's something therapeutic about it.
Mhm.
I always say it's the journey, and the journey doesn't mean Bigfoot. The journey could just be either the passion. People can say it's a hobby. It's the truth seeking. It's being with your friends, and it's like I do need that. That's kind of my go-to. On some weekends. And hey, you know what? I'm not spending any money at bars or anything. So,
Right.
or spending a lot of money doing golfing or anything like that.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I'm just saying it's like it's just what I like to do to get out there. But besides work, working for the man full time, because we all
Right.
have jobs.
Right. Right.
Usually at night, I am. Well, I'm either cooking the dinner for the family, spending some time there. But then it gets to be around my time where I'm working on my third documentary right now.
Right. Right.
So it's this documentary will be coming out in later summer.
Nice.
Um,
Of
you
this
know,
year? Of 2025?
oh yeah, 2025. Yep.
Okay, good. Oh, I can't wait. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, I've got the official trailer out right now.
Do you? Okay. All right. And
So
so let's talk about your three films then. So you've got two that are already done, and where can people find these?
you can find them on Amazon Prime if you're a Prime member. Um, and you can also find them on Paraflix. It's like Netflix,
Mhm.
but it's just paranormal related. Bigfoot,
Okay.
Dogman, Ghost, UFOs, really good documentaries, really good movies. And yeah, because my first film came out, Finding Jay,
Hmm.
in 2019,
Hmm.
and that was supposed to be my one and done. That was it. But
Right.
I had so much more to tell, and because I've had so much more captured, I wanted to share that. And in 2022, I came out with Beyond the Kettle, Finding J2.
Okay.
And then the near the end of the summer, this summer, I will have the Kettle Connection, Finding J3.
Nice.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
keeps me busy.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the things I appreciate is you're actually making a timeline of stuff that you've discovered and things that you have found. And you have a lot of evidence. You've seen a lot of things, like you said, different things along the way. But it sounds to me like this last 2023, when you're talking about a sighting during the day, that was very different than the red one that you saw before, the blur. So
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
very different. So, in what you've discovered so far, how many different types of Bigfoot creatures do you think there are that you've noticed? What have you
yeah.
seen?
I mean, just to be able to answer that would be difficult because even my sighting in March of 2023,
Mhm.
it wasn't a Harry and the Hendersons upfront visit. I
Right.
could totally. I mean, it was quick. I know what I saw because it wasn't out
Right.
of the corner of my eye. I actually looked at it. So I know
Right.
what I saw. I can only conclude with all the different behavior or what I call trace evidence.
Okay.
Again, do we really know what that is?
Right.
I didn't find hair, I didn't find scat, but
Right.
I'm finding prints. I casted
Okay.
a print. I hear the wood break, and it's not just a twig; it's massive branches. I
Right.
hear what sounds like wood pops out there. I'm seeing these lights, and I don't even know if they're connected or now it's just to me the woods has just become the living woods, and I've really kind of been looking and learning a little bit from the Native American ways here in Wisconsin,
Okay.
because the kettle was very much a prominent Potawatomi.
Okay.
Um, and so I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to talk to some Potawatomi elders,
Okay.
A Ho Chunk elder. And so I'm looking at it a different way. And I know that it's been done. So it's not, I'm not bringing anything, I don't think, new to the table that way,
Right.
except that I'm now applying some of the learnings that I have and some
Mhm.
of the respect I have that, within the living woods. Because I think, my honest opinion is, Bigfoot's just kind of like the tip of the iceberg out there, or maybe the bouncer of the woods that's the protector. And I still try to ask myself, well, what is it protecting? The bunnies, the coyotes,
Right.
like that? Or is there something bigger that it's protecting?
Right.
So it's kind of the avenue that I'm going at. And again, when you sit here and you try to discuss this about, what my faith in God is or what the Native
Right.
American beliefs are versus the hard knock science.
Right.
And that's the hard part because I'm kind of using all three right now
Sure.
to help help me discover my truth out there,
Right.
and then to be able to share that.
Right. So, in your discoveries and things that you found, what evidences or what things have you found that would link more towards a dog man type of sighting?
Well, I mean, with that, which I've only found, well, I don't want to say one, but it was a huge dog or canine print that was, close to 7 inches, in diameter. But
Wow.
again, when you look at it, you want to make sure and this was in the snow, does the snow
Okay.
melt? And if it melts, it
Right.
makes it bigger.
Sure.
So, I've had to really look at a lot of that, but I really haven't personally had what honestly, and I really don't even know at this point. I mean, that's actually a great question because a lot of people that are out researching Dogman, if they have a Sasquatch encounter, they immediately go to Dogman.
Sure.
And if I'm out there, it's like, all right, I found prints that
Hmm.
look like Bigfoot. I've had stones thrown at me like Bigfoot behavior would. I've heard
Right.
the I've heard the vocals like
Right.
Bigfoot would. So who's to say that everything that's happening, any other weird things, is not a dog man? But I'm just going with a Bigfoot because we really don't know.
Correct.
And, and that's one of the things that I try to tell everybody. If you're a ghost hunter, you're going to come out with me. It's going to be the banshee or the ghost
Right.
of the woods.
Right.
You're into aliens. Those things are just gray aliens doing that to you.
Right.
Dogman, same thing. Bigfoot, it's got to be a Bigfoot. So I think it's by our perception, but to be able to keep open and honest with yourself. So that's why when people said, "Well, how many Bigfoot or types do you see out there?" and it's like, honestly, I really couldn't even answer that because one of them could be a dogman, one could be a gray alien,
That's fair.
one could be a manifested ghost. I don't know.
Right.
But that's where I'm trying to get to for myself is trying to
Right.
find that truth.
So, when you have come across some orbs, I actually have a lady that I met at a dentist office who showed me a video from Washington State, where I live, on some private property that her family owns. She and her mom were out hiking in the woods around, they only have 14 acres, and they were out just walking around. And behind her mom, consistently, no matter where she walked, was this giant blue orb. And I mean, like, it was the size of a volleyball. It wasn't a little teeny glowing light, it was massive. And her mom believes, and she believes, that it's connected to Bigfoot somehow. How it's connected, they have no idea, but they seem to go in some sort of linear connection to one another. When they see the orbs, they tend to see Bigfoot not long after, and vice versa. When they've seen some kind of motion or activity that leads them to feel like maybe they're looking at a Bigfoot, in a glance or whatever, then there seems to be an orb not far away from that. So, would you say that you feel like you've had any connection, or is it still up in the air for you on that?
Well, that in my second documentary, I kind of did look at that a little bit, of trying to say I put a thermal of something peeking its head around a tree. This is my second documentary. I have it filmed, and it was peeking its head out, going to the other side, peeking its head
Right,
out, and it looked huge. Definitely, after going back and researching the height and everything, the thing was ginormous.
right.
And but while filming, or at least using my flare, it's ducking its head back and forth. And all of a sudden, it was gone for, I don't know, maybe about 30 seconds. I just figured, okay, it's not there. I put my binocular down, and then there was three of us standing there. All of a sudden, this orb just comes at this nice arch right over, kind
Okay,
of from where it was at. I don't want to say that's exactly where it was at, and we all saw it. And it was not behind the horizon; it was in front of the
okay,
trees. We're all watching it, and just
okay,
as it got out of sight, we heard a loud crash, like through woods. And
okay.
that's then is when I was trying to put the two and two together. I'm like, did this physical being just become an orb,
Right,
evade us, go across the kettle, and then all of a sudden you heard it become physical again, and then it flew to the
right.
trees.
That's the big question. And a lot of researchers have asked that, because
Yeah,
what are they doing in the same space? First of all, why? What possible connection could there be in? Is that just an example of them using an alternate form of movement? Is the orb just the
right,
residual energy of them moving in another dimension? Because there's a lot of conversation about them being interdimensional creatures.
right now. But then once you dive a little bit into the elders, or
Right.
the people before us, they they believe everything's alive in the
Okay.
woods.
Right.
So, meaning, is there a connection between the two? Absolutely. Does it mean that these orbs of light are Bigfoot, or are they a separate entity, but they're all kind of working together?
Right. Right.
Like the clownfish and the anemone. In the
Right.
they
Right.
yeah, they live together.
Right.
And again, I don't know, but that's where I was, right where you were at, or what you were explaining. I didn't mean to say that's where you're at.
Right.
Of what you were just explaining, of did it become energy and evade, because that's where I
Right.
was. And
Right.
now, just a couple of years later, because I still don't know, I keep, the wheels are always turning. I'm like,
Sure.
maybe it's, maybe it's, maybe there's something so much bigger that we're looking, that, we're looking for Bigfoot, right? And
Right.
we're looking for orbs. And then I'm like standing in the woods looking at all these standing pines. Then all of a sudden something dawned on me. It sounds crazy, but I'm like, I feel like if I was a flea on the back of a dog, and all those pines or trees and everything were all its hair, right? So
Okay.
I'm like, okay, so wait a minute though. If that's all its hair, what are we standing on? And that made me start to think, how all the trees and plants and everything are just interconnected
Yes.
underneath that. When I speak to the living woods, it's literally, you can knock on this tree, and the tree 20 yards down can feel exactly what you're doing. No, and I know that it gets wild, but that's how come I never just stop on one thing and just say that's what it is. And even right now, talk to me in 2 or 3 more years.
Right.
we'll find out it was Bob the Builder from TV, and he's just up,
Right,
doing something. Who knows?
right,
But it's just that's just me trying to keep an open mind of the woods, and I guess the native some of the Native American teaching, which is an honor to know just that little bit about it. And using, like I said, using my faith in God. That's what I always do. My prayers are to Jesus first,
right.
and I'm learning how to kind of give thanks with some tobacco.
Sure.
And I think, like I said, is looking um, a little broader than just Bigfoot, because
Right.
I think we need to see the bigger picture of what
Mhm.
that is. And what that is, I don't know yet, but I'm going to keep going doing it.
Well, it's kind of an endless subject at this point. There's so many different ways to approach it. And I'm fascinated when I get to talk to people from all different areas of the world, especially the United States, because it seemed like there were things really kind of centrally located in certain parts of the states. And now, because of all the TV programs and all of the videos and all of the documentaries, there's a little bit of everything everywhere.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
It almost feels like this veil that has kept everybody blinded for all these years, except for a few small, select people that were fortunate enough to be able to have their reports documented. And now, like you
right.
said, we can see abroad now, of
Yeah,
the vastness, and it's people are either more accepting it, and with that, I just think that veil is just getting thinner to where we're starting to see these things for what they are, whatever
exactly.
they are.
Well, and like you said, replaying things in your mind, the Bigfoot that I saw when I was 12, I've replayed that in my mind many, many times. And I had never heard of a Bigfoot or a Dogman or anything when I was that young. I was in the early 70s. And I saw it standing, leaning over a small dumpster. And now I'm 5'5" right now. And when I stand next to those smaller dumpsters, they pretty much come up to my shoulder. And so when I was 12, they were a bit taller than me. I was a lot smaller. But in perspective, when I put it in my mind and think, how tall was that thing? Okay, well, if the dumpster is about 4 feet high on the highest corner, it was leaning over, reaching in with its arms. It was towering over it. It wasn't just a couple feet taller. It had to be 10 feet tall or 11. It was literally at its hip and it was leaning over. So it was a huge, huge animal. I mean, its legs were 4 feet tall, for heaven's sakes. So if that was the mid torso, if you want to just keep it simple and say if that was halfway up, that was a lot leaning over to reach in. That was a lot of length. And I keep thinking to myself,
Mhm.
holy crap, that was a tall something, whatever it
Definitely
was.
was probably bigger, because actually, from what reports show, um, a lot of encounters is that the Bigfoot legs and knees they're oddly placed than they
Yes,
are on humans. So,
yes,
if you were pretty much seeing the legs up to right where its waist is, then
yeah,
now you got the rest of the whole thing towering. So it's got to
exactly.
be huge.
And so, and I'm thinking, anything that big, okay, so maybe they've got a giant stride and that explains some of their speed and their, when they see this pacing, when there's all these documentations of footprints and how, they're 5, 6 feet apart. Well, yeah, if they're that tall, of course they're going to be that far apart.
Right, right.
But I can't help but think, when I didn't know they existed and I saw one during the day in California, broad daylight, whoa, that's incredible. And
You
granted,
you
we
gotta
were,
you gotta feel fortunate. you
Oh
know?
my goodness. But
Yeah.
I didn't know what the heck I saw. I had no
Right.
idea. I know that we never went camping there again. And I know that we left the next day because my parents were very disturbed by that. But they of course didn't let on to me to be scared. They're like, "Oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about it." And then, in their tent that night.
Right, right.
But nothing was really relayed to me to be afraid. And I never heard the word Bigfoot, not once. Um, but now it's like I actually have people that, like yourself, that I've talked with that have had very in-depth experiences and very deep connection to them.
Right.
A very dear friend of ours does different types of meditation and healing and the Reiki stuff, which is very new agey for some of us. Maybe it's too much, but she's delightful and she's very good at what she does. And she actually works with a Bigfoot. She actually has like a spirit guide type thing that speaks to her. It helps her with healing people. Why not? If they're part of the earth and the earth is full of stuff that has good healing properties for us, if this is something, an entity, a creature, a living something, a living being that's been around forever, they might be able to help us with a lot of things. And
Yeah, that's and I know where you're kind of going with that too, because there's a lot of things in nature that would cure us a lot better than what we get
yes,
pharmacy
right.
or the food we eat.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
for sure.
I agree with you though.
But it's fascinating to me because it feels like, I don't know, it's like a balloon going up in the air. It goes all over the place. There's so many other subjects that this seems to bring forth. And when you talk about talking to the living forest, I love this one documentary I saw about mushrooms and how they act like communicators between trees. That when one tree has something happen in one end of the forest, scientifically it can be proven that that same information is miles away within seconds.
It's crazy.
It's mind-boggling.
It is, and I think I love that apart. Of learning about that, of just saying that
Yeah.
they're not just trees.
No, they're not.
They're living. They're
They're
talking.
alive.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's so cool.
Isn't it cool? I
Yeah.
love it. I think it's incredible. Well, okay, so you've okay, so let's say you started in 2013, more specifically, would you say that?
Oh yeah, 2013 was when I started.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot's happened in 12 years. What do you think is your next thing? I mean, I know that you've kind of got something almost done, and I know that there's no for sure plan of the next thing, but I'm sure with you there is a next thing just
Yeah.
because
Well, there
um,
always is. A lot of people are always like,
yes,
"Well,
it doesn't end.
Well, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, when is the end game for what I'm doing?" I said, and I told my wife this. I said, "Well, as soon as I find Bigfoot, that'll be
Right.
done. I'm gonna start looking for unicorns."
Right.
And and it's already hard enough for her to say, "Yeah, my husband, he goes out in the
Right.
woods," and I mean, it's
Right.
getting better, and she gives me her, the 100% support, which I love about
That's
that.
so
And
awesome.
yeah, it is, and
Wife is awesome.
and this this journey that I think I've been on is not just saying, does Bigfoot exist to me, because
Right.
because I'd say I know it does.
Right.
I want to go deeper than that. It's
Right.
like, I've, and I'm sure there are everybody who investigates that goes out there wants to get to the bottom of that. But I keep
Sure.
thinking that I'm closer than I ever have been in 12 years.
Now,
Because
why do you think that? Why do you feel
um,
that way?
well, whatever this is that's been following me
Hmm.
has been following me for, quite a
A
while
long
now,
time.
for a
Right.
couple of years. It was a year ago, February, but of all things,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
again. And we always do what we call like a leapfrog, and
Okay.
that's where we separate ourselves by a safe 150 yards.
Okay.
you know, and if there's four of us, we're just all 150 yards away from. So, and I always take the end,
Okay.
and then somebody will always take the beginning, and then the object is to be alone, but a safe alone. You're still within a quick running distance for help.
Of each other. Yeah. Smart.
And this one particular leapfrog, I actually catch up with Sherry. She was there, and we catch up
Okay.
with Michelle, and that's David's wife. And David was leading,
Okay.
and we get up to him. And I always ask, because again, I'm the guy who has the phone in your face.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so anybody experience anything? No, no, no. David's like, yeah, it's weird. I heard what sounded like either something really heavy fall out of a tree,
Okay.
and then it sounded like there was walking.
Hmm.
And he says it didn't sound quadruped; it sounded bipedal. And
Right.
again, he's trying to keep on the same level too. You can't
Sure.
say what it
Sure.
is.
Right.
And I'm thinking he's, I told him, I go, are you yanking my chain?
Right.
And he's like, no, no, I wouldn't do that. We had a good
Right.
laugh of it.
Right.
So, I look at my iPhone because it was dark, it was
Yeah.
pitch black there. And I look later at my video and I'm looking at him and doing that. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool video and everything.
Hmm.
Well, then I went through my body cam, which I usually do if something big happens at that time, but I just don't review it.
Right.
And I think David's wife dropped one of the walkies on the ground, so she wasn't able to communicate with us. So we're trying to find it. So
Hmm.
when I was looking back at my body cam, I was watching. We're watching, and I'm like, all right, oh, there it was. Okay, I didn't see it, but there it was. And then we did get it eventually. And I'm still watching it all the way up to where I put the phone on David, asking him what he
Right.
heard. But what I caught on the infrared body cam is just it's mind blowing. It's something right off the path with a huge eye just peeking around the side of the tree. We could not see it with any light that we had. There was no
Really.
reflection because we're all standing there facing there.
Okay.
The only thing that picked up was the infrared. And think of this thing, whenever David was talking, it would shift over to him. And then
Sure.
when Michelle would add something in, it would focus on her. And then it
Okay.
would focus on David. Then it would focus on, and I'm
Right.
standing still. I'm never moving.
So, like, it was listening to you guys?
It was listening. And,
Oh, goodness.
people, right.
Whoa.
Yeah. And people say, well, it's an orb. Well, I'm like, but nothing was illuminating off the path at
Okay.
all. I mean, when
Right.
I'm saying off the path, we're talking 6 feet, 7 feet from where we were standing. It was right
Oh,
there.
crap. Wow.
And whatever this was, and you see a glimpse of it in my official trailer
Okay.
for this next one.
Okay.
There's so much more to that, and it is like I said, is this like what is this now? People are like, well, Jay, it's got one eye. You know, it should have two eyes. If it had two eyes, we would say that was Bigfoot. And I'm like, I'm not even
Right.
saying it was Bigfoot or not. Whatever it was not floating like an
Right.
orb. It was on
Right.
a swivel, left, right. Sometimes it
Wow.
would stay there, look up. You could see the side of whatever it is. It looks like the side of an eye, and then
Wow.
full over, and it's incredible. And then people, because we all talk about how Bigfoot could be, is Bigfoot flesh and blood? Bigfoot
Right.
through portals, is Bigfoot spiritual, like the Native Americans say? Uh,
Right.
what is Bigfoot? And it's like, well, it could be all those things wrapped in one. I try to keep open a little, open on that.
Right.
Um, but who's to say that this same one eye that's I've now gone through a couple of years worth,
Yeah.
and it's there and it's watching. It's
That's
open.
incredible.
Yeah, it is. And it's, sometimes I just ask myself this like a week and a half ago. I'm like, but why me? And it's nothing to feel special about. Like I said, the
Right.
fame, fortune, or hey, look at me, pick me, look at me.
Right.
To do it that, it's more, what is it? It's there
Exactly.
all the time. And again, people are like, well, it can't be Bigfoot. I'm like, well, Bigfoot is. I believe Bigfoot is flesh and blood, but
Right.
and so many supernatural, super attributes to
Right.
it as well. That okay, say it is flesh and blood, like everyone says. Can an eye get damaged and it's walking around as with one eye? I mean,
Maybe.
I don't
No,
know.
that's a fair question. That's a fair question because you really don't know. That's incredible.
You don't know, or is it that at night, which nobody's ever picked up, um, does this big infrared biological thing appear on its forehead
Right.
that we're seeing? We
Third eye
again
and night or something.
the third
Oh
eye, and again we don't know.
my God.
It's just something
Wow.
that this the only way I can go is to go forward and just keep moving forward. I feel that because my wife's ever said if I ever go out in the woods by myself, because
Mhm.
I like to go with people. It's not
Yeah.
because I'm scared, but my wife
No,
said
but it's smart, just in case.
well, she said if I ever go out into the kettle and die, she's going to kill me. So I I had to
Yeah.
make sure that that everything's been safe. But over 12 years, I'm still living to tell the tale,
Right.
and I just keep going.
Yeah. That's incredible, Jay. I can't wait to see your third one.
Yeah,
So, for everybody listening and watching, this is Jay Bachochin I've been talking with, and he's an experiencer, he's a researcher, and he is definitely somebody that we need to keep an eye on. And he's been doing these self-produced stories of his own experiences in the Kettle Moraine in Wisconsin, and these are very involved. And he doesn't make these standing statements of this is it, I know it is. He's very open-minded and gentle with the way he presents his evidence, which I highly respect and regard, because anybody can say, I saw it, I know it, it's there. But the reality is, if you can't back up what you say, then what do you really have? You have a lot of evidence and maybe not enough proof. So he's got his own evidence, and I think the proof is out there. And I don't know what the evidence will be that will make you finally say, that's it, I saw Bigfoot. But I'm glad that you're still researching, Jay, and I'm happy to talk to you about what you're finding because I think it's fascinating.
well,
And
thank you.
yeah, I mean, I appreciate you. It's like I just talked to Al not too long ago, and you guys are doing stuff that I can't do where I'm at right at the moment. And but I'm with you in spirit because I love this whole subject matter. I think it's incredible because I saw one at such a young age. It stayed with me my whole life.
Yeah, and
It
right, it does, and you can't. And I agree with you. You can't.
You
It's
can't
hard to
let it
let
go.
go. You want to know more, and that's like I was stating before, right? You can believe half of what you read, believe half of what you hear. You
Right,
100% believe in what you see.
right,
That therefore it's and that's not a new quote.
right,
That's always been there. My thing has always been, what? There's what close to 8 billion people in the world,
right.
and everybody out there has their own truth.
True.
And their truth is what their perception is, or they're
Right,
observing, and
right.
not everybody can share that same truth. So
Yeah,
that's why I say go out and discover it for yourself to find your truth. and,
exactly.
and that's why I try to encourage people to do. I always say I could be the best snake oil salesman this side of town and believe what I say, or I'm a good
Right,
speaker.
right,
Not until you go out and observe for yourself can you really come to that conclusion.
right.
You know,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, Jay, thank you so much for meeting with me tonight and sharing with everybody what's going on with you. And I can't wait to your release. So please keep that posted with me. Keep me in touch and let me know when that's going to be released because I'll
yes,
definitely share it with the listeners and viewers.
absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on to
Oh, yeah,
let me talk, because you know me, I can just talk, 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 talk.
that's okay. It's a great subject. It's easy to talk about.
It
So
sure is.
absolutely. Well, this is Holly from Holly's Pandorium, and this is Jay Bachochin. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for stopping by. Please give the video a like if you like this content, and follow if you want to see more. Thanks again. This is Holly saying thanks for listening and watching.